Welcome to the show, Scott. Super happy to have you. Thank you for taking the time to spend with us today.
No problem. I appreciate you having me. How are you?
Doing very well.
Good.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you do, just to kind of give people some background and kind of some context as to what type of work you're in?
Yeah, certainly. Over the past 25 years, I've done a lot of work in and around small business, and I could go into that. But to answer your question, really, I'm trying to build a business that no matter where you are as a small business owner or aspiring small business owner, I can help you take the fears and unknowns out of doing either of those things. I mean, that's really the basic gist of it. I certainly, as you mentioned, I am a business broker. I do walk business owners through the process, hold their hand, and act as a full service business broker. But developing courses, throwing out content like I'm sure you do, just to help people really take the fears and unknowns out of the process.
I love that. In your experience, what are some of the biggest fears and unknowns that you help people to get over, or maybe that, those looking to jump into it should maybe be aware of or be thoughtful of?
Most of the time, people just really have a not a very good idea what their business is valued at, frankly. I mean, that's a big one. But at the end of the day, it's this fear among both existing business owners and aspiring business owners that you don't want to get a raw deal. You're at this point, and let's go from each side briefly. You're at the point as a business owner where you'd like to sell your business for maybe a variety of reasons. Some of those are good, and some of those are not so good. If you have recently found out you have a serious health issue that's going to prevent you from running your business going forward, and you have to get out quickly, so you're motivated to sell that way. Or the business is good, your business value, or you're at the top of your sales range, you think, and maybe you're worried this run of economic prosperity is coming to an end, and you'd like to get the most out of your business that you can right now. Or they're just a variety of factors. Lots of people like me, unfortunately, maybe are prone to a little bit of the, oh, there's a squirrel kind of mentality, and they have another business interest that starts to get their attention, and that takes off a bit. And now they're looking at this existing business they've had for a while, and maybe it's something that they'd want to part with if the conditions were right. So for business owners, it's all of that. But at the end of the day, I'm not prepared to sell my business if I'm going to get a raw deal. I feel like my business has value. What's it worth? And if it's not going to be something that I feel like is fair, then I'm not going to sell it. And the same on the other side for buyers really are afraid of the same thing. Most aspiring business owners have never dipped their toe into small business ownership, even though, like a recent study like Vistaprint says 62% of us want to be our own boss.
Yeah.
But they sit there and they think, okay, where do I start? What do I do in order to get myself, pursuing my American dream here that some of us have already done and some of us really enjoy, for better or for worse, doing,
Yeah.
And so they're sitting there saying, okay, if I do it though, what happens if I pay too much? What happens if I take out a loan and I pay too much for the business, and now I'm almost suffocating from the debt load and debt service on this business, and goodness, what do I do now, kind of thing. I'm on the hook. I've got my family that's bought into this trip down business ownership lane here, and now I got to sweat it out. So hopefully that answers your question, but that's what I'm seeing.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think you talk about kind of how in the worst case scenario, you've got the person who is trying to maybe get out of their business. Maybe they see that the change in the market and they're trying to escape. And then you couple that with someone who's nervous about getting in, and those two people meet, and maybe a transaction changes, then that creates a lot of challenge and difficulty.
You bring up a very good point, because once the hesitant buyer meets the hesitant seller, that is not a very good recipe many times, because unless you build the relationship properly, unless you go into it and start to try to build from a position of strength and trust and things like that, and know the process and are confident in a process, you end up just being very skeptical of the other side and start maybe not intentionally insulting the other person, but, wait a minute, you said your business is doing this. I noticed this, and you're, in no uncertain terms, you're lying to me, prove it. And it can get ugly. And
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like having a discussion with another parent about, the value of a child, or,
yeah,
the parent who
yeah,
owns or who is the parent of that child is going to be very critical and careful and
yeah.
protective,
Oh
whereas the
yeah. And
buyer
then,
is going to eyes wide open, right?
yeah, this business owner spent the last 10 or 15 years building this business that throws off a couple 100,000 in free cash flow. And they've got this wonderful business, and they're like, you should be kissing my feet for the
Yeah.
opportunity to buy this business. And meanwhile, the buyer's scared beyond, any degree of normalcy because they've never done it before. And they're looking at, if a business throws off a couple 100,000 in free cash flow and you value it at a couple X multiple, their loan may be a couple, let's call it 350 to 500 grand. And like, I'm not going to sleep again for the rest of my
Yeah.
life, and that makes it difficult, so you can't do it really, in my experience, at over 25 years of doing this. You just can't do it without a process.
Yeah. So what got you into it? So take us back, and we'll come back to this, but take us back to how you got to where you are now.
So I started out, I graduated from college and I didn't know what I wanted to do. So a really good friend of mine who had helped me along the way said that you should sell something if you don't know what you want to do, because that'll be as good, if not a better education that you can get or you are getting in college. Just sell something, because you will really, you'll get some scars and bumps and bruises and learn some things along the way, but you'll always sell yourself. So do that. And at the time, I really didn't have any good reason to argue with them over it, So
Yeah.
I said, well, all right. I mean, it makes as much sense as anything else I could be thinking about. So I went and sold life insurance for Northwestern Mutual, which is probably the hardest form of selling, because you're the pariah at any party. People want to run from you. I mean, it's like, in
You're
order
one
to
of the
sell it,
financial advisors that are huddled in the corner of
right?
the
You
room.
go try and find some of them and have the same conversations. It's just, it's an existence. And I enjoyed it, but I wasn't much for a lot of the details around it. And I didn't want to necessarily be where I was long-term to raise a family and all that. So I still had, and Northwestern Mutual has this really structured cocoon of an entrepreneurial behavior in it, and an environment like that, because they don't pay anything. You got to earn it all yourself and all that, but you do have a proven product set and track to run on, all that. So it's a good way to learn right out of the gate. And so I did that, got done with that, and then I just decided, you know what, I'm just going to jump in the deep end and be an entrepreneur and let the chips fall where they may. So I started a website. I got some venture capital money for it. I sold that for 1 million shares of worthless stock at some point, and so my first painful experience of selling a business for nothing. And then I founded and built a couple businesses in succession that really did well. And I sold both of those. In one of those cases, I actually had to buy out my partner. And so that really represented an opportunity to, quote, buy a business, because it's the same process to buy out a partner.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point, I had some time and money, and I thought how much I enjoyed the process of buying and selling businesses, that I might as well figure out a way to do that, on a much more regular basis. So I got into a business where I was helping buy and sell businesses, and it was a niche business brokerage, and we sold independent insurance agencies. And I just kind of stayed around the Southeast, and that was really helpful. And I learned a lot from that, because sitting with buyers and sellers got me on that third side of the table that I hadn't experienced yet. I had been on the seller side, I had been on the buyer side, I had been on the founder side and business owner side, but I hadn't been on the intermediary side. And I love that. I love helping people realize value or
Yeah.
get into a business themselves. And so that's kind of my background.
What was your biggest surprise in that position? Not being the buyer or the seller, but now being kind of the objective third party, right?
Gosh, that's a good question. I've learned so many lessons. I mean, it's a culmination of lessons learned. And I tell some of these stories, one of which, was as I have learned over the past 25 years and developed this proprietary process that I have. In each of those steps, there are some big aha moments that you'll have, and you get them through experience. I'm 50 years old, and there are lots of businesses where age does not matter. You can acquire knowledge quickly, or, I think of digital marketing and some of the stuff people are doing with online businesses. You don't need age in order to be good.
Yeah.
But in my business, fortunately or unfortunately, age is a really valuable asset, because over the 25 years is what's primed me to do what I do. And I'm developing and launching a course this month. And those are the things that, I'll draw on, is all those experiences, one of which was all closing meetings. If you're ever in a business and you're selling one or buying one, the closing meeting should be 30 minutes long max. You go in, you set all the agreements on the table, the closing attorney lays them all out in triplicate, you walk around the table, sign, exchange checks, and you're done. That is a closing meeting if it does well. If you've ever bought a house, it's very similar.
Yep.
You're not haggling over anything anymore. It's just a formality. Well, I had an 8-hour closing one time. So you're like,
that wasn't just walking around the table signing.
That wasn't walking around the table. That was a guy who brought his brother, who we didn't know existed until then, and he happened to be an attorney, and his brother wanted to show us how smart he was. He already had an attorney who went through and looked at the deal, and we thought we agreed on everything, and we had to rehash the entire deal in 8 hours.
Wow.
So things like that, if you don't follow a process, then you're liable to learn some very valuable lessons. I had one statistic say that 90% of small businesses that get to the scheduled closing meeting will sell. And so 10% still don't, even though, let's say you and I, you're the buyer, I'm the seller. We've gone through everything, due diligence. We've looked at, and we have final agreements in place. And we literally know next Tuesday at 2, we're going to be sitting together, exchanging checks, and you're going to be buying my business. Well, I sat at the runway terminal waiting for my buyer to come off the plane. He never showed. And it was that afternoon, the closing.
Wow.
So those are like, the question you asked was, what have you learned? Those are some of the valuable lessons you learn. And so what does that do? At the end of the day, that gives you perspective. You know that how many times and how many ways a deal can die. And because you've developed a process by learning and going through all those things, you know how to navigate all those obstacles better. And it just increases your chances. And that's what, that's really what I've learned over the years.
That experience is invaluable.
It's invaluable. And if I had only been in business 8 years and I'm trying to build this course, and that me standing at the jetway and not having the buyer show up is in the 10th year, I don't get the benefit of that experience. And my students or people who are my clients or people who take my course won't get the benefit of that experience. No. But because I'm 25 years in, I've had a lot of experience.
So what do you say to the business owners who, they're in it, they're trying to do it on their own? I mean, how do they don't have to experience that in particular, right?
No.
So what is their approach? Do they just need to go out and get a business consultant or a business coach, a broker when it gets to that point? Like, at what point do they bring you in?
There are 3 things any business owner needs to sell their business. They don't need a business broker. They need 3 things in place. They need a transition plan. Statistics say more than 70% of us business owners have never thought anything about transition. They have no idea what they're going to do if and when they sell their business, if and when they have a health problem and they need to sell it, if and when they want to retire, if and when they get distracted and they have another business opportunity. Regardless of the reason, people aren't thinking about business transition. So they need a plan. I have a free course that it's already out there that's how to develop a plan, no strings attached. First off, we got to get business owners thinking about what they're going to do if and when they're going to sell their business. Create a plan. That's number one. Number two, have a reasonable expectation of the value of their business. I will speak personally here too. Several times I was frankly a little disappointed in what my business was going to be worth based on what I saw and the research I did about valuation. I thought it'd be worth way more. I thought I was going to be, Mark Cuban and buy the Dallas Mavericks with my winnings or whatever. It's not true. Most small businesses have a multiple and it's a range. So you got to know the value of your business and be reasonable about it. Have a reasonable expectation. And the final thing is you got to follow a process. In my case, I've developed a proven process at 6 steps. It's not really all that difficult to understand, but it's more than a little difficult to execute.
Yeah.
So what do business brokers do that really, no matter how many things you get in place, it's going to be a challenge? Well, number one, they act as an intermediary. It's very hard for me to say, Jared, I noticed that you're not reporting all your income. Should I report you to the IRS right now? Or, why are you a liar? Essentially. And the point I'm trying to make is no matter how huh? Yeah, it's not going to go over well. I could say it in any number of ways, but the way you're going to accept it is just like I said it.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for insulting me. A business broker will be there when the buyer asks the question that way, and then he'll call you up. The broker will call you up, the seller, and my client, and say, hey, Jared, the buyer just had a little bit of a question about this. And he softens the blow. He filters the information to you so it's delivered in such a way where it's not going to impact your feeling about him as a buyer. And that just adds up, man. That is straws on the camel during a sales process. And eventually at some point, the seller, very prideful in his or her business, is going to get to the point where they say, I'm punting on this guy. I don't have it for him anymore or her anymore. And I'm tired of being insulted by it.
So what do you recommend? Because I think that's probably central to a lot of the selling of a business is the necessity of really having that stark reality of what is my business worth? Yeah. And if anybody watches, Shark Tank or The Profit or any of these shows, they see that is a constant sticking point. So if I'm a business owner and I really want to get a reality check and give myself a reality check, what do you recommend, or some ways that I start that, or where do I look? How do I do that?
It's really funny you mention that. And I would say it's one of the core reasons I do what I do, because 90% of all US-based businesses are under $1 million in annual revenue.
Wow.
Okay. So 90% of us are sitting there, and we may have these independent businesses that suit our families fantastic. We get to live the American dream, control our time, control our income, all of it. But we're still under $1 million, right? If you go online and type business valuation, it borders on shocking how involved and how much they want you to pay to get what's called this testimonial driven valuation, or used discounted cash flow, or it's just, I want to simplify it. So what I've done over the past 25 years is really try to understand how you can use some really readily available metrics. And as long as you have comparables, which I have access to a deal database that has over 40,000 deals in it of completed transactions for small businesses.
Wow.
I've created a report called my Business Range of Value Report. And we have a revenue method, a seller's discretionary earnings method, a fair price method, and we have it's a DSCR method, but it's really taken from the SBA and what their ratios are for how much they're willing to lend on any given business. So the revenue method means that based on comparables inside your niches, I can find 15 deals that have happened and look at the revenue of all of those businesses and then find a multiple. That's typically less than 1. So a revenue multiple inside the average small business might be 0.8, 0.7. It just depends on the niche. On the seller's discretionary earnings side, it's called SDE. That's also a very, very common metric used in valuing businesses. And all that means is it's all of the money inside your business that isn't used to run your business. Okay, so let's say you have a business, typical, let's call it a business with a product, cost of goods are 40%, expenses of employees, whatever, all the other expenses associated with it, location, everything else, that adds up to, let's say, 70%. Well, then you pay yourself and you have profit and you have maybe some things that you use as you call fringe benefits. All of that money gets added up and is called seller's discretionary earnings. Mm-hmm. So you use that number then and apply a multiple to it. And it's against comparables in the niche that you're in. And I've simplified that process. So it's easier to establish value and reasonable value because you're looking at other businesses in your niche. So
love that.
In terms of going somewhere, yeah, I would advocate coming to see me, but valuing your business can be challenging. There's some ways to find it on the asking price side. So if you went to like a place like Biz Buy Sell and you looked at asking prices you searched your niche, you typed in whatever it's going to be, like ice cream store, and there are a number of ice cream stores for sale. You could look at the asking price and you could look at their revenue, and you could pretty much plot a grid and find out what people are asking and what kind of multiple that turns out to be.
Yeah.
That gets you to an asking price, but some industries are so ridiculously overpriced that the difference between asking price and selling price, which we look at inside our report, can be dramatic.
Yeah. And I think the bottom line is you've got to, if you're thinking about selling your business, you can't just look at your business. So I love, talking about the comparison. Who else is selling a business like yours? How are they doing it? What's it going for? So that you can look at your kid and say, yeah, my kid's great, but look at all these other kids.
Exactly.
They're
maybe he does misbehave at school occasionally, and maybe he doesn't tie his shoes every time, and that kind of thing is, the reality check is important.
That's important. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So tell us, I know you did a recent podcast on your show talking about a business that you started, bought out your partner, sold, and then you helped your mom buy it back again. Is that, can you briefly tell us that story and just walk us through that? Because that's pretty unique. So it kind of caught my attention. I have not listened to the full episode yet, but I'm interested to hear it kind of from the horse's mouth.
Yeah, the company is called Nantucket Furniture Company, and back in 1997, time flies, man, when you're 50 and you have 5 kids.
Hey, you don't look like you're 50, so that's great.
Well, I'm 50.
You're like, I feel like it.
Oh, man. So back in 1997, as part of a wedding gift, believe it or not, my wife purchased some slip-covered furniture from a major, well-known furniture place. It was actually like a home furnishing / decor place. A couple years later, we called up because the slip covers had gotten a little ratty or something happened to them, and she said, I'd like to buy some replacement slip covers. Basically the premise of slip-covered furniture. And the company said, well, we discontinued the line and none of it's not available any longer. And I'm like, what? It's a pattern. Like, no matter whether you're building the frames or not, the stinking slipcover is just a pattern. Sew it, it's not that hard. So that literally at that instant, I said, that's a business. I said, and at the time I called it Fabric and Frame, furniture forever, slipcovers whenever. That was it. And then for 10 years, that idea sat on a shelf. I did other businesses. It just sat there. But after I sold a business I had started with 2 partners successfully, it came back up. And so I said, I've got time and money. Maybe I'll pursue this thing. So I went out and I decided I didn't want to name it Fabric and Frame. I named it Nantucket Furniture Company. And I made a mistake there because the word spelled correctly was not available. So I changed the spelling of the word and titled my company Nantucket Furniture Company. But instead of ET at the end of Nantucket, I did IT. And people used to ask me and say, do you call it Nantucket with an IT because you tuck in the slipcovers? And no, that's not why I didn't do it that way. And that's the whole, like the ego of a small business owner, I'm like, why not just say yes? But I'm like, no, I didn't do it that way. Don't talk, you act like such a moron at times. But anyway, I digress. So I started calling around furniture companies because A, I didn't know how to make furniture. B, I didn't have a warehouse or a manufacturing facility or all probably the necessary things you need to do it. But I did know by some research that a very big company that's still a home decor, well-known brand wasn't doing that either. They went to a furniture manufacturer and private labeled a line of slip-covered furniture by the manufacturer. So I said, all right, why don't I call these people and see if they'll do that for me? So I started calling around and I got to a company and I said, hey, I was wondering if I could sell your slip covered furniture. I'm an online company. Oh, well, we don't sell online because it would really create havoc with our brick and mortar retailers. So I'm like, well, I don't want to sell it. I don't want to sell your brand. I want to sell my brand. I want to sell a privately labeled version of your furniture. Can I do that? They're like, yeah, you can do that, but you need to place a minimum order of 25 pieces. So I said, all right, let me see if I can round together 25 pieces of furniture. I'll go out. Can I have your price list and everything? And can I go around and see if I can do that? They said, absolutely. So they sent me their price list and I just told all my friends, anybody I knew, furniture at cost. Here's where you can help me. I need 25 pieces. I don't want a dime over the cost. I'm going to bring you the price list at cost. If you want to buy any furniture, here's your chance. And I got exactly 25 pieces.
No way.
Exactly. So it was, I don't know, a $10,000, $15,000 order. I submitted it. They gave me the account. I sent them deck labels, which is the label you put on a piece of furniture that's under the cushions with my logo on it. And I'm in business as Nantucket Furniture Company, and nobody in the world knows that I don't have a manufacturing facility. I don't have any of that stuff. I'm a bona fide furniture company now. And so
that's incredible.
I turned the site on in October of 2005. The first day, some lady from Florida calls me and orders a blue sectional, $3,800. I'm like, holy cow, this might actually work. And so, it was shocking to me because and I think it's still the method of the website of the business now that my mom currently owns. It's, you came onto my site, you looked at the furniture, you had to pay me up front, 100%, no returns, no refunds, and you can't sit in the furniture. This is what I offer, take it or leave it. And that's how I sold, that's how I did my business. And within probably 18 months, I had grown it to almost $1 million in revenue.
Wow. And
so I just was advertising on Google when Google advertising was affordable. And, I built that business. And then 2008 came and the Great Recession hit. And it basically halved my business.
Wow.
So I got it back up to about $65,000 a month in revenue, and then I was burnt out, and I was ready to sell it. So I asked a business broker to help me, believe it or not, even though I had sold 2 businesses before, and even though I was an intermediary before, a business broker who specialized in online businesses and knew buyers in my category. It was worth it for me to enlist the services of a business broker in that case. So I did, and I sold my business within like 4 months.
Wow.
So I sold it to another guy. He retained my mom, who I had on for 2 years, because my mom is a fantastic entrepreneur in her own right. She had built a interior decorating business when I was growing up. So she knew how to do all that stuff. And when anyone called me and wanted to talk colors and fabrics, that was not me. So I asked my mom.
Let me transfer you.
Right, exactly. So my mom came on and worked part-time and just helped all the people who wanted some custom furniture colors and patterns and coordination of fabrics. So she did that for me. He kept her on for a couple of years, and then he didn't make a go of the business very well. He did not do well with it. He made some poor choices. He did not keep the business site current, and there were fabrics that were out of stock. That it didn't go well. And eventually, he offered it to my mom, who said she wanted to buy it. She brought on a partner, and I helped them buy it about 18 to 24 months ago. So that is the story.
And they still are in business. Nantucket.
They are in it. Go to Nantucket. It's NANTUCKIT.com, custom slip covered furniture. One of the mistakes I made, that the business is still selling the stuff, but I made a mistake. Instead of just sticking to what I loved and knew best, which is just slip covered furniture, I started adding leather and upholstery and other things, and I just watered down my niche. I was good at what I did, but when the Great Recession hit, I felt like if I added some more product lines, I could get my revenue back up. I should have just stuck to my guns and lived with what I got good at, which was selling slip covered furniture. So
that's incredible. Lessons learned. But your mom sounds like she's doing good with it.
Yeah, that's again, like, we talked about it earlier. Without 25 years of experience, I'm not as well suited to help people in this regard, because I've been through those wars. So
love it. So I want to shift gears a little bit, just keeping an eye on our time, and want to be mindful of that. But you've done a lot. And clearly one of the things that I, first noticed about you is that you are very devoted to your family.
Yeah.
Very devoted husband, father. Tell me how you manage it all, right? I mean, obviously owning your own consulting agency can pull you away.
Yeah.
So what are your strategies, and how do you keep it all together on the home front while you're still grinding away on the business front?
Yeah. On a really, really basic level, my wife and I started down this road knowing that my wife, for her entire life, when she was a young girl, she dreamed about being a stay-at-home mom. That's what she wanted to do with her life. I never had a dream. Like, I was not fortunate enough to know what I wanted to do. I can tell you my dream at 11 wasn't selling slip covered furniture.
No.
It wasn't stuff like that, but she knew. I did know I wanted to be my own boss. I did know my personality was such that I was going to have a rough time taking orders from people, so I did know that. So my wife and I made a deal. If she could stay home with the kids, she would let me do whatever I could do to kill it and bring it home, as long as it was legal. And I could really sort of keep mind of my priorities, which are, love my God first, and then be present in the lives of my wife and kids. Be present, like physically present. Now, that has its set of challenges, because my wife and I have talked about this regularly over the years, and you can't be great at lots of things. You can be good at some, maybe great at one. And I've chosen to be great at being present in the lives of my family, but that means I've sacrificed business. I've sacrificed maybe, the top end of my business range for my family. So I've just made sacrifices on the business side, and I've tried to keep business ownership a part of me, so that I wouldn't have to make really big sacrifices that lots of people have to make on a regular basis. So, I mean, if that answers your question, that's how I get through it.
Yeah, I love it. What are some of the ways that you are committed to being present in the lives of your, children, family? Like, how does that actually look?
I work from home. I don't work out of the home, and I refuse to go build a business with a location that I have to travel to every day. I've looked for businesses that I can build and develop from my home and work from home. So physically present is literal to me. You know what I mean? It means being physically there where all my kids I have my oldest is soon to be 22 and my youngest is 5. Every single day of their lives, other than occasional business trips, I've been home to welcome them home from school and to see them off school, because I know I'm not getting that time back. And it gets me emotional to a degree, because I know like the sacrifices I've made to do it. And my wife and I talk about this, and I really am coaching myself and her through this, but now is my time. My youngest child is now in school full time. Now it's my time to execute the rest of the plan, which is now I basically have to be great at business so that I can build enough for retirement, and so that I can say I was there presently for my kids, and I was there to meet the needs of our family on the income and financial side too. I'm getting there. You know, I've done well, but I think, you know, there's still some chapters yet to be written in this story.
For sure. What do you say to the people that just say that that's not possible? You can't build the family and the business and be just stellar in both.
I say I get it. Like, I get that the grass of small business ownership is not greener. It's just a different shade, because no matter what you do, you're going to make sacrifices. So I don't think I'm necessarily suggesting that my sacrifices are better sacrifices than somebody else, but I wouldn't have want to have not been there for my kids. I wouldn't have not want, I mean, I've coached every single youth sport they've ever played prior to them turning 10 years old. So it's soccer, baseball, football, basketball. I've coached probably 60 youth sports, because I'm the guy who can be there at 4:00 for practice on Tuesday, because that's what I want to do. And I've had to, I'm not saying that every month over the past 22 years, we've had enough money to pay all the bills every time. We've had to take savings and things like that. We've never had to go into debt, but that's the normal life of a small business owner too.
Yeah.
You know, I know there are lots of business out there where you have to have physical occasions and that. I just think that if you want to make it work, you will.
Yeah. I love that. You've got a range of kids. You have 5 kids, right?
Yeah.
So from 5 to 22, some of your kids old enough to probably understand that sacrifice that you've made.
Yeah.
What kind of feedback have you got from them, or maybe validation have you got from them as it relates to those sacrifices?
I'll read you a text I just got from my daughter. Let me find it. This is my daughter who's a freshman in college, and this is a pretty powerful text. If I can find it quickly, okay. Here we go.
You're good.
Let's see. This was last Thursday. She sent this from college. Okay, I miss y'all. You more than anything, and appreciate everything you've done and sacrificed me so much. More than you truly know. I'm the person because you raised me, and I'm becoming evident through the conversation I've been having with my 13-year-old daughter over the past couple days. She texted me because we started talking about a confirmation in church, and I don't know why I never really realized how amazing and God-fearing she is. She truly is a light, and wow, it just shows the parents you all are. I can just feel God moving all of the pieces in my life, and all of these people in college are saying how well I'm doing and all the friends I'm making is just based on the kindness and love and those core values you taught me. And I eventually learned also core values Jesus wants for me. And I always remember, Dad, when you would pick me up from soccer practice or a game or an event, you'd ask me if I was the kindest person on the field. And I was so annoying for me at times, but now it just shows me how much you raised me. And Mom, just with literally everything you do and say, I only wish to be a quarter of the kind of generous person someday. Now I'm just crying in this library bathroom, and I just had to send this text to you.
So, wow.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you for sharing that. That is inspiring. And I just want everybody who's listening to really just think on that for a minute, because you don't get texts like that when you're absent, when you're not present, when you're not intentional about being there for your family, raising your kids, all of that. And so just thanks for sharing. That's
no
personal, and amazing. I'm
Yeah.
inspired.
Yeah. Yeah. It was good it was good to get it, because there's the other side of that conversation too. And it's the conversation when she was thinking about colleges, and we were probably at a low point. And, we've made a agreement with our kids that we'll pay for their undergraduate education, but we've given them a cap on that amount. And that cap is an in-state tuition for the University of Tennessee at Knoxville. And that's, these days it's about 18 grand for 1 year. But she wanted to go out of state.
Mm.
And so that was going to be an extra 15 grand a year of loans on her.
Wow.
And at one point I said, and it was another state school, just an out-of-state school. So very similar, just different colors, different basketball team. It was very similar. So here I am, the mature adult, trying to have this conversation with this, high school senior who is trying to work through all that. And I said, so let me get this straight. You're going to pick one state school over another state school with really essentially just different colors. And for that, you're going to be minus 60 grand in the hole when you get out of college. And her response was, that's right. Yes. And she stormed off, and you're like, well, what do I do now? This is a first. Like, I mean, these, there's no training for any of this.
Yeah.
And we just let her go and figure it out herself. And she came back reluctantly. And then she decided reluctantly to go to the school she's going. And then the first time she came home, she said, Dad, I just want you to know how well I'm doing. And I'm just so happy I'm here at the place that I, quote, reluctantly decided to go to. But it was probably because even though it was a reluctant choice, it was her choice.
Yeah.
She made the choice. We didn't force it. We just said, please think of the consequences of you thinking about a very similar type school, but man, 60 grand in the hole to start. That's, just think about that.
Yeah. Yep.
So
well,
it's a roller coaster ride. There's no doubt. I think I would be a bit insincere if I tried to come off with you and all of your listeners as, the parent of the year. I mean, this not that for sure. For sure.
Hey, there's definitely, for every high point, there's probably a dozen low points, right? I mean, it's parenting is not easy, but I think to your point, I mean, when you're intentional about it, when you're thoughtful about it, when you are willing to make sacrifices for it, I think the end results end up being more often what you've just described. Kids realizing and being able to make good choices and recognizing sacrifice and being kind. I mean, that stood out to me. That's what's really important.
Yeah, I think, and selfishly, like totally selfishly, I don't want to be at the end of my life looking in a mirror and saying, I really regret not being there. As it stands now, at least at a minimum, no matter how they turn out, and they're going to have to survive in spite of me in many ways. Or I don't know how.
Leaving the nest eventually.
It's not going to be pretty, maybe, but at least I can look in the mirror and know that I was present. Like that part of it, I did not sacrifice. So.
Love it. Well, I know we've got just a few minutes left. So the Greer method is really about driving performance with consistent habits, the right skill and technique, and then managing our intensity. So real briefly, I've got a couple last questions for you.
Okay.
What are the core habits that you employ on a daily basis to drive consistent performance?
I do my very best to spend time with God first. If I put God first, I think he'll lead me through the day instead of me trying to lead either myself through the day or get led through the day by other outside forces. I'm pretty consistent with that, I would say. I don't do it every day, but I try hard. I make my bed every day. There's a book that says make your bed. It's a good way to get off to a start. And if you're really having bad days, at least you accomplish something to start the day. From that, Tim Ferriss's book, 4-Hour Work Week, is a pretty good tool because he asks you to lay out your day and what's going to make today great and think of at least 2 or 3 things that you can do. If you did those things for that day, it would be a successful day. So I try to do that most days. So those are some of the things, I guess.
What are the ways that you continue to develop your own skills and abilities to help get you to where you want to go?
Continue to try to be a learner, try to take in information about where I'm headed. So much of what I'm doing right now is trying to launch my brand as I see it in the future, which is a combination of full service business brokerage, but then also as a teacher with a course that teaches people to, for all those business owners, they may know this or may not. I'm always surprised that there's a fair number of business owners that don't know business brokers exist to help them. But business brokers charge 8 to 12% of value of the business. So if you sell your business for 500 grand and you've had a business broker help you and they charge you 10%, they get 50 grand. Most business owners may choke on that. As a business owner, I don't want to give up 10% of my business. If it means I get 100% of nothing, okay, I'll give up 10% of 100% instead of, I keep 100% of nothing. But what I'm trying to do is develop a course that allows you to save that money.
Yeah.
If I could develop a course and tell you everything I know, so you walk through the process yourself, and the only thing you got to keep mindful of is I got to be careful what I say. Otherwise I'm going to assault this person and he may walk away or she may walk away. The tips of, hey, be mindful of this stuff, because this is the stuff you really can't do because you're not a business broker. But that's how I'm trying to get better, is I'm trying to develop a business where I can help more people.
Love that. Love that. Awesome. And the very last question, how do you keep yourself far from complacency yet still avoid burnout or injury or stressing yourself out to where you lose all your hair?
Gosh,
company excluded, right?
That's a good question. I know I got no hair. Look at that. I don't necessarily know if I figured that out yet. I think that's probably why you exist, to help us work through some of that burnout. I do experience burnout. I try to work out regularly. That's probably the one key thing. When I notice myself getting frayed, it's because my kryptonite is a sedentary lifestyle. If I don't work out and I don't release that stress somehow, you don't want to be around me. Nobody does. I don't want to be around me. So if I can work out 3 times a week, I know that you're a big time triathlete. I saw that in your bio. So you may have some of the similar outlook.
No, I've definitely got to get out, man. I'm like a caged lion if I'm sitting around all day. Yep.
Yeah. I think it's valuable that I know my kryptonite, which is, I don't know how to release stress in maybe a way that people can without exercise, but it does it for me, exercise. So.
Love that. Well, Scott, it's been an absolute joy to have you on the show. Thank you for coming on. Where can people get a hold of you, connect with you? Where should we point people to?
My website is probably the best place, williamandhill.com. It's, William, WILLIAM ANDHILL.com is probably, for people who want to talk to me and have questions about buying or selling a business, there's a link to a consultation, and I'm happy to talk to anybody without strings attached about, what they're going through. So.
Awesome. Well, we'll put a link to that in the show notes.
Cool.
And just again, appreciate the time today, Scott. Loved having you on, and we'll probably have you on again because we didn't get to your 3 buckets. We didn't get into a discussion about the American dream, which I wanted to. But we'll do that another day. So definitely appreciate the time and energy around it.
That's a great tease, though. The 3 buckets. People are like, "What are 3 buckets?"
I know, man. And I had that kind of actually high on my list, but I think the conversation was good. So
yeah, it was good.
We'll bring you back again.
Okay,
for sure, brother. All right,
thanks,
Scott.
buddy.
Have a good one. Thanks so much.